All right, big news overnight. I think it's big news. Kamala Harris agrees to an interview, but sleight of hand. It's not Kamala agreeing to an interview. It's a twofer. She's bringing her emotional support running mate, and sort of no one. They're trying to play this off like even in Politico, they said much anticipated their interview. They're using their pronouns. It's not her interview; it's their interview.
Yeah.
Just generally speaking, I mean, objectively, what do you think of the tactic that they're using to check this box?
Oh, I think it's brilliant
Yeah.
because if Kamala Harris had to do an interview all by her lonesome, there would be problems. She gets nervous. She doesn't perform well. She starts to do that really annoying laugh that everyone is keyed into now as an indication that she's highly nervous and doesn't know what to say. So no, there's a reason why when Biden ran against Trump in 2016, he hid in his basement the entire time. The difference was as COVID was going on and so you could get away with it. They can't do that now. So they're going to have to rely on the press in order to carry the water for her. But no, this is a brilliant campaign move for Kamala Harris because she doesn't perform well in this sort of setting.
You know, it's a really apt analogy that you're making because he got to hide in his basement and claim it was COVID.
Mm-hmm.
This time she's basically the equivalent of hiding in a basement. It's just that the press is sort of like, you're out in the open, but we'll pretend you're in a basement and we won't criticize you. We won't, question you. We won't harp on you.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing though. I mean, she's hiding in plain sight.
Yeah. Well, and the question is does she intend to govern this way? Like, if she is elected president, is that how she plans to actually manage the White House and the executive branch of government? Is she's going to bring Tim on with her whenever she has a hard decision to make, or like what exactly will it be? But again, I don't think this should surprise anyone. We got to see this side of Kamala Harris when she ran for president in 2020, and she didn't even make it to the primaries because Democrat voters rejected her. The only reason why she is the candidate right now is because of all the money that Biden was able to raise, and they believe that they can transfer it to her because she was part of the ticket. Because if they had to pick an entirely new candidate, it's not like the Biden campaign could just pass over $91 million. So they're stuck with her. They know it. They're trying to keep her off camera as much as they possibly can, and they're going to hope they can slide by.
It's amazing though. She didn't have to go through the primary. So she didn't have to answer questions. She didn't have to account for her past statements. And now they're giving her a pass. And it's amazing. Even today, I mentioned this a minute ago before you got on, she switches her policy on electric vehicles, right? But notice it's never, they say she switched her position. Well, where's the she in that, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, my point is, it's never her making an announcement. It's some unnamed campaign surrogate that says she switched her position. And she doesn't actually have to do it. And then the press goes, okay, noted. We won't talk about that again.
Yeah, I think we all need to just expect this from the press, right? Nothing about this should be surprising to any of us. We all knew that the press was going to work overtime to carry water for her because she's not Trump. That's all it is. And as far as Kamala Harris, I don't think she has. I definitely think she has an ideological leaning. But the most important thing to her is to accumulate power. Like, that's what it is.
Right. That's it. No, that's it. You finger, boom. It's about power. I'll be who you want, right? No matter what.
It's the old it's the old Groucho Marx joke when he was doing a bit where he was pretending to be a politician, and he gets done with his little shtick and he goes, and those are my positions. And if you don't like them, we have others, right? Like that's Kamala Harris. It's always going to be a left-wing perspective, right? She's definitely a dedicated leftist, but she's not going to be committed to any one particular policy position if she thinks it stands in the way of her accumulating power. Now, once she has power, that's going to be a different story. But ultimately, again, I said this when Biden initially dropped out. I said, here's what's going to happen. For about 5 minutes, they're going to try to get you really excited about Kamala Harris. And it's only going to be for 5 minutes because that will never work. She's not exciting. She's not a gifted legislator. She wasn't a particularly effective attorney general. She's not an effective debater. She's not a charismatic speaker. She's none of these things. And so after that 5-minute attempt to get you really excited about Kamala Harris, they're going to rely on what they always do. It's either going to be race, sex, and then it's going to be demonizing the right. So that's what this whole strategy is going to be. It's whoever the Democrats pick against a threat to democracy. That's it. So they can't run on what they've done. They can't run on her personality. They can't run on her competence. So they're going to have to run on first black woman and Trump's a fascist, right? That's and not just Trump. Keep in mind, this is the one thing that I think everybody is kind of caught on to right now. They're not just calling Trump a fascist, right? All of us are bad guys. All of us are threats to democracy. And when they say our democracy, they don't mean our democracy. They mean theirs, right? They mean them having power. And whenever they don't have power, that's a threat to democracy. And so the insult is not just directed at Trump. It's directed at all of us that don't want to live under this sort of ideology. And so I think, look, everyone should just stop being surprised about what the press is doing. All of this was highly predictable. What we need to focus more on is what do we need to do?
And what's that? What is, in your opinion, what's that?
So a couple of things. One, like if you're a Republican, stop apologizing for it. Right? Stop this whole statement, it's kind of in the black pill community on social media. It's this whole, what radicalized you? Nothing. I'm normal. What caused the other side to believe that men should be able to walk into girls' locker rooms? What caused the other side to believe that we should have pornography in school libraries? What caused the other side to believe that it's perfectly appropriate to give chemical castration medicine to 9-year-olds? Like, we're not radicalized. We're actually behaving quite normally, right? We actually have a pretty firm grasp on reality and common sense. The other side has lost its mind, and I'm tired of pretending like they haven't. And I'm not going to apologize for what we believe. I think what we believe makes a great deal of sense. So we need to be bold about what we believe. We need to not be afraid of, if I say something, this might. Getting offended is part of their strategy. So don't be surprised when they do it and there's no reason for it other than it helps them politically. So be bold on what you believe. Don't buy into this crap of, the Democrats are just going to fix it anyways. Well, shoot, if you don't show up and vote, then they don't have to fix it, right? Because you're being lazy. And that's what that is, by the way. It's not, I'm being principled and I see what nobody else sees. I'm awake and not woke. No, you're giving them exactly what they want by not participating. And then the other thing I would tell people is, look, if you're the sort of person that watches your show, that watches my show, you're probably a little bit more politically astute, right? You're probably paying a little bit more attention to what's going on within politics. You are the political person in your friend group. What that means is you probably got 5, 10, or 15 other people in your immediate acquaintance who share your values, who go to the barbecues with you, who watch the game with you, who do all that other stuff, who, maybe they're a little bit apathetic, or maybe they think it doesn't matter. Me telling them to go out and vote is something they've heard 1,000 times. You telling them to go out and vote is something they've heard 1,000 times. But when a close friend says, hey, man, you need to vote on this one, right? And you apply just a little bit of peer pressure. You're not sitting there beating them over the head with it, but it's like, hey, dude, you're going to go vote tomorrow, right? Like, come on. They will. They'll go and do it. And they'll come up and be like, hey, man, they'll show up again. They'll show up to your house. They'll show up to the barbecue. They're like, hey, I voted. I know I needed to. You were right. And you do that with 3 or 4 people. That makes the difference, especially if you live in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, right? Because those races are all going to be decided by, a couple thousand, if not in some cases even less than that, votes. So that's where it matters the most. Don't worry about what the media is doing or what they're saying or the latest indictments they're trying to throw out there. Just stay focused on what you need to do and go do it.
There's so much in what you just said that is so valuable. The first thing I totally agree with. I feel like they want you to feel guilty about being normal. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, why won't you let men walk into a kid's bathroom? What is your problem? I'm like, wait a second, I'm the normal one in this. But I agree with you. The idea is to put you on defense and have you explain it. I think the last one is really important. I've told people this before. The most trusted source when it comes to election information is a friend, colleague, or family member. And to your point, like, as you were talking, Nick, I was thinking to myself, how many times, like I have a lawyer friend, and I'll call them all the time, and I'll be like, ask her, hey, is this legal, or how would this play out? I have a doctor friend. I'll be like, hey, what's this spot? Like, you rely on people's expertise based on their field. And I think that you and I in particular, and all the people that watch this show, to your point, have a degree of responsibility because we are the trusted sources. People will say to me, and I'm sure you all the time as an elected official, will say, is it that important that I do this, or what does this mean? And we need more than ever to take this really responsibility very seriously and say, all right, here's what's at stake. It's not just go vote. It's here are the things that matter, because if you don't, this is how they win. And by the way, that goes back to point one. If they win, then they can change the kooky, crazy stuff and make it a law.
Well, and I think we need to understand that, anybody that hasn't done a little bit of study of Antonio Gramsci and this concept of the march to the institutions, you really need to. And James Lindsay does a great job of kind of, I think, explaining it to laymen. I've gotten a lot out of talking to him about it. But it really is this idea that if you look at what the left has done over the last several decades in our country, they have done a lot of work, not just on trying to win elections. They've done a lot of work on trying to be the dominant force within culturally shaping institutions. And so that's why we find ourselves in a situation where all of a sudden that something that would have seemed crazy 5 minutes ago has its own mini series on Netflix now. That's insane. But they've invested the time and the effort there, and we need to do the same thing, right? We need to be competing in those cultural spaces as well. And look, so much of this is solved by, again, just normal, God-fearing, patriotic people investing the time in their relationship with their kids, with their family members, with their friends. I don't worry about my kids and their worldview and them getting tripped up by, what they're hearing outside or what comes over, TikTok or things like that. Not because they're not independent thinkers, but because we've invested the time in explaining why do we believe what we believe and why is it important and why it makes sense. And when you invest in that time, especially with your own kids, you don't got to be worried about what the college professor says, right? They're going to be solid. And so I don't want people to get discouraged. I think Trump's going to win this. I mean, let's go over something real quick. The media right now, everyone is like, oh my gosh, Harris has surpassed Trump in the polls. Did all of us expect Harris to get a bump in the polls when Biden dropped out? Yes. Did all of us expect Harris to get a bump in the polls after her convention? Yes. All of that could have been predicted 4 years ago, right? It just makes sense. Let me tell you what nobody would have predicted 4 years ago. Elon Musk, RFK Jr., and Tulsi Gabbard coming out endorsing and supporting Donald Trump. Nobody would have predicted that 4 years ago. No, not even close. Why? Because more and more people, to include independents and even people that consider themselves on the left, are starting to conclude that this is not what they signed up for. This is a very, this whole woke ideology is very corrosive. And by the way, it's not insane. Woke ideology works exactly the way it's supposed to, like poison, right? So understand that. And I'm actually encouraged about what I see going on. I'm sure I'm frustrated about what Kamala Harris is doing. Sure, I'm frustrated about what the media is doing. But I've been frustrated about that for years, decades, right? But I'm really excited about what's happening within the general population now that are waking up to this and saying, you know what? There's a much wider group of people where we have far more in common. And we are rebelling against this nonsense. And I think that's going to be reflected in the elections. So I'm encouraged.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.